Okay, now tonight's talk will be about a topic which I think is most dear to us, and that is, how do we do it? I mean, how do we actually gain realization? I mean, we've been talking about all these very interesting things and stuff, but when we really get down to it, I mean, how do you actually do this? Well, that's called the fourth noble truth. So we all know that we have, when we come to the path itself, the Buddha was talking about the noble eightfold path. And the noble eightfold path is the fourth noble truth. So we have the first noble truth, the noble truth of dukkha, of suffering. We have seen that. Second noble truth, the origin of suffering, which is craving. We have seen that. Then we have the good news. Good news. The third noble truth, you can make it. You can do it. Liberation is possible. Freedom from suffering is possible. I have done it, said the Buddha. You can do it as well. Great. How do we do it? The fourth noble truth. It's called the Noble Eightfold Path. This ancient path that was walked by previous Buddhas, and the Sakyamuni Buddha used to say, I have rediscovered this path, and it's worked for me, and it will work for you as well. So, walk it. Go and walk. Now, first of all, the Buddha in his first discourse calls the Noble Eightfold Path the middle way. And because he had already practiced the other two ways, which is the way of sensual pleasures and the way of extreme tough practices, asceticism, and he said, neither of those work. They haven't worked for me. So what I'm preaching is the middle way, the middle path. So, when we think about the Noble Eightfold Path, so there are 8 different parts to it. One might think that these different parts of the path have to be practiced one after the other. That's not really correct. I mean, there is some truth to the fact that each path arises because of the previous ones. But it doesn't mean that when we are, practicing the fourth level, we do not practice the 1, 2, and 3 anymore. We keep on practicing those. So we can say that it's like something which goes along all together, These different factors feed on each other, and all of them are to be practiced until the end, and also after realization. We keep on practicing, because there are 4 paths, 4 fruitions, and all that sort of stuff, So it's a long way. But anyway, so number 1, it's called right view, or sammaditthi, or right understanding. And right view is stated to be the understanding of the 4 noble truths. So, we really have to understand, but understanding means see deeply into the Four Noble Truths as right understanding. That's what it means. It's not just from an intellectual point of view, you know. So we must really see the truth of suffering. We must really see the truth of the origin of suffering, which is craving. We must have faith and confidence in the fact that freedom from suffering is actually possible. And fourth, that there is a way out of suffering, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So that it's taken as right view. Now, right view at one level also means the understanding of the law of karma and its results. What does that mean? It means that understanding how our intentional actions create karma that has the potential to ripen and bring results to ourselves as we move from life to life, or in this life itself. So basically, it's the realization that we are responsible for our own actions. And that morally significant actions have consequences that will eventually bounce back upon ourselves. Now, bear in mind that this is not some sort of secret police or anything like that. You know, it's like if the regular police doesn't catch you, you know, the law of karma will take care of you. It's not really like that. It's more like you are responsible for your own actions. And each and every action will give a result. Either immediately, after a while, or after a long time. But the whole of the teaching of the Buddha is that it's causes and conditions that come together and give a result. So, certain causes and conditions give certain results. Other causes and conditions give other results. But we are the actors. We are the one responsible for those actions. That's why... Oh yes, one more thing. The right view of karma is not sufficient for liberation. It's one of the factors, but by itself is not enough. So even, wholesome actions, in themselves are not sufficient to lead to liberation. One of the factors, but they are not enough. It's what's really needed is this deep insight into the nature of things. Otherwise, liberation is not possible. We'll see about that. So, keep this in mind. Right view of karma and its results on its own doesn't have the capacity to lead to liberation. But the view that leads to liberation is the right view of the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Okay? Is that clear enough? Good. Enough for right view. Second factor is called right resolve, sammasankappa, or right thought, right aspiration, right motivation. Okay? These are the possible translations for sammasankappa. So when one has the right view, the right understanding, As we cultivate and nurture that understanding, it starts to have a transformative effect on our own intentions, the kinds of purpose we set for ourselves, the kind of motivations that govern our behavior, our conduct. And this is the intention of renunciation or detachment. Now, let's be clear about this. It doesn't mean that you have to become a monk or a nun. Very simply, it means that by developing this sort of right understanding, more and more we start seeing more clearly what is basically worthwhile doing. I mean, to put it really simply, it's how we use our own time, for example, our own resources, our own talents, how we spend our life, basically, how we spend our own vacations. Do we go on retreats or not? I'm just joking, but there is some truth to that. Meaning that the deeper we see, the more we become interested in some things, and the less other things are interesting to us. Quite simple, it's not so difficult or mysterious or anything like that. It's quite... Things are simple. So, the intention of renunciation or detachment doesn't mean that if you're following the Noble Eightfold Path, you have to give up the household life to become a monk or a nun, but rather, as the understanding of the Four Noble Truths develops in the mind, it leads to a kind of recognition that it is our craving that generates suffering. That's it. The impact of that, this understanding of suffering, brings a kind of a growing detachment from the voices inside our heads that tell us all the time, to be happy, you have to do this, have this, be that, and all that sort of stuff. We start believing those voices less and less. They are still there, but they are less convincing. We start paying less attention to those voices, and we start paying more attention to the things that we see as being true for us, valuable, freeing, all that good stuff. It's no matter what other people say. So instead, our intention starts to shift as we discover that one could be happy, more peaceful, more joyful, with less dependence on material things, for example, or having to be someone. You know about that? Ever heard about that? To be recognized. Who are you in the end? Oh, I don't know. And neither do you, unfortunately. But you do not know about that. I do. I have no idea who I am. And, by the way, I don't think it is so important after all. But never mind, just... So, that's right aspiration, right motivation, okay? Right thought. Number 3, 4, and 5, because these next 3 factors belong together as they constitute the basic ethical code, the ethical section of the Noble Eightfold Path. Basically how we should behave. So we know that we have 2 basic ways through which we behave. That is through speech and through action. So we find, of course, right speech. And these are the words of the Buddha in the Pali Canon. The Buddha enumerates 4 factors. And what is right speech? Said the Buddha. Now, abstaining from lying, abstaining from divisive speech, from abusive speech, meaning insulting somebody. Divisive speech is, putting one person against the other. And 4th, this is really nice, from gossip and idle chatter. Imagine just doing these 4 things. The whole of the social media world would collapse instantly. No more Twitter, Facebook, that sort of stuff. Number 4, right action. Sammakamanta. Like right speech, it is expressed as abstentions, but in terms of bodily action. In the Pali Canon, this path factor is stated as, and what is right action? Abstaining from killing, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So, things you'd better not do, because they will lead to suffering. Basically to suffering. It's really clearly stated, no doubts about what you shouldn't be doing. Then you see for yourself, of course. Then, number 5, it's right livelihood. Samajiva. Since it seems we all have to some sort of work to earn a living, there are some sort of activities we'd better avoid, possibly. And what are those activities? Not trading in weapons, not trading in living beings, slavery, and human trafficking, organ trafficking, that sort of horrible things. What else? Meat, alcoholic drink, or poison. Of course, in those ancient days in India, it was more clear-cut. Nowadays, we really do not know these big multinational conglomerations of firms and things. We actually do not know. So we do what we can, basically. Basically, we do what we can. Now, that was number 5, right livelihood. Now we come to the 3 factors which work together in constituting the meditative side of the path. What we are doing all day long, basically. 1, right effort. Sammavayama. Is preventing the arising of unwholesome states and the generation of wholesome states. This includes guarding the sense doors, restraint from the sense faculties, in the Satcha Vibhanga Sutta, right effort is expressed in the following way. And what is right effort? Here the monk arouses his will puts forth effort, generates energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of evil and unwholesome mental states that have not yet arisen. He arouses his will, and goes on, and strives to eliminate evil and unwholesome mental states that have already arisen. He arouses his will, etc., and strives to generate wholesome mental states that have not yet arisen. He arouses his will, puts forth effort, generates energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have already arisen, to keep them free of delusion, to develop, increase, cultivate, and perfect them. This is called right effort. So basically, it's avoiding the unwholesome mental states, akusala, and cultivate the wholesome mental states. Those who have not yet arisen are to be avoided, unwholesome. Those that are present are to be gotten rid of, eliminated. Wholesome mental states, those that have not yet arisen, have to be cultivated and make them spring up, you know? And those that have already arisen must be nurtured, make them grow stronger and stay longer, possibly. That's the idea. To do that, of course, one has to keep a watch on the mind. That means that one needs to be mindful, to be on the lookout for these things. You know, it's otherwise you cannot really do that. You know, of course, these include, these unwholesome mental states, the 5 hindrances, like sleepiness, restlessness. You know all about these things. You know, I don't have to tell you about that. So, what one has to do with right effort is to keep a watch on the mind. Watch the mind, simply. And when one sees the unwholesome tendencies starting to arise, then one has to make an effort to restrain the mind, to prevent oneself from yielding to those tendencies. It's a way of mental cultivation which requires a pretty high degree of vigilance. And that is one of the things that one does in meditation, one of the skills that develops in meditation. Now, let's try and keep this in mind. What is not being advised is to be very stressed and always on the lookout for these horrible things. You know, I can imagine meditators being all tensed up all the time. I have to be very attentive. It's not really like that, you know. It's more like a relaxed presence, you know, because these things will arise. So part of the practice is simply realizing that they have arisen and not to follow them, basically, you know. And if they haven't yet arisen, just, you know, it's be on the lookout for them, but it's watch the 5 senses, basically, you know. Again, craving is at the basis of this thing, you know. It's because anyway, they will arise, no doubts about it. But to see at the positive side of things, besides these horrible things going around our hearts and minds, we also have an infinite potential for liberation. Each and every one of us has, as a human being, this potential for ultimate liberation. That's really good news. No one is excluded, if everyone has it. And again, since everybody has the potential to achieve enlightenment, one needs to develop those qualities which lead to enlightenment. There are very many of them, but one set of wholesome qualities would be what they are called the 5 spiritual faculties, which is faith, confidence, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. These are to be developed. They are there as an infinite potential within our heart minds, but they do have to be trained. We have to train them, to make them grow stronger. And that's what we are doing all day long, from morning to night, morning to night, and morning to night. That's how you learn, basically. So, to get to the real basics is let go of what is unwholesome and develop what is wholesome. To do that, you need mindfulness, to be on the quote-unquote lookout for those things which are unwholesome and for those things which are wholesome. And everyone can do that, according to the Buddha. Not bad. 7. We come to the core of the Buddhist meditation practice, and that is right mindfulness, samma sati. The Buddha speaks about right mindfulness as being part of this path to deepening wisdom and to the eventual attainment of enlightenment. So, right mindfulness deepens wisdom and leads to freedom, to nibbana, to enlightenment. The Satipatthana Sutta, which you all know, describes the contemplation of 4 domains, namely the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, or dhammas. So we all know about this, actually. Contemplation of the body, you all know about it. Contemplation of feelings, again, Vedana. Keep in mind, these are not emotions. Just very simply, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. This pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, if not recognized, can give birth to a chain reaction, From the unpleasant, aversion can come up. From the pleasant, attachment can come up. Neutral, confusion, around those lines. Not really like that, but anyway, that's the idea. Also, keep in mind this. Then, of course, third area is the mindfulness, is the contemplation of the mind, cittanupassana. We should say that the 3 kinds of feelings, as I just said, act as the stimuli or triggers for the 3 unwholesome states of mind. Which are those? Greed, anger, and delusion. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Okay? Of course. Pleasant, greed. Okay? Unpleasant, aversion. Yeah? And neutral, delusion, don't know, not clear, that sort of a thing. Confused. Of course, if there is clinging, if there is no clinging, no problem. It's very simply, it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Without clinging, no problem. With clinging, lots of problems. In a way. Now, let's give an example of this. When painful feeling arises, okay, this is quite common, we all know about that. And we have seen that painful feeling can arise in the body or in the mind. Okay? In the body, through sitting in meditation, for example, for a long time. The natural response is aversion to the painful feeling. I don't want it. Or to the situation that causes the painful feeling. I do not want to sit too long. That sort of a thing. But instead of doing that, one turns that state of mind into an object. So, when aversion arises, instead of surrendering to it, one just observes the mind in the grip of aversion. Usually it is said, mind with aversion, mind with hatred, mind with delusion, mind with, colored by. So it becomes the object. I do not react, I just use it as an object. So, instead of becoming an obstacle to the practice, it becomes an object of the practice. We turn the thing around, basically. So, I don't have to wait until I'm always totally comfortable to practice. We wouldn't practice much. But slowly we can learn to watch that particular aversion as an object of investigation. And what do we look for? The usual three things. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. There. So we just, angry mind, okay. Not, I shouldn't be there, horrible. I've been meditating for 500 years. Still no progress. Of course, you haven't understood much. Maybe someone should have suggested a while ago another way to go about these things. Just maybe, just little suggestion here and there can go a long way. It can save you a little bit of time, actually. But kamma, kamma, yes, of course, of course. And that's the most important part. So instead one turns that state of mind into an object. So when aversion arises, instead of surrendering to it, one just observes the mind in the grip of aversion. And what one finds, it is really true, by the way, it's not just to make you happy. What one finds is that when one focuses on these states of mind, by looking into them, they lose their power. the unwholesome states lose their power over the mind. Slowly, slowly, little by little. But it actually happens, you know. It's just, if you are just willing to stay with it, and it's not easy at all, you know, but one can make this amazing discovery. There is no substance to it. It's not really anything. It's just this energy, basically. And if we, you know, it's not easy, but if we actually try and just stay at that level, which is not thinking about it, no, but just be with it and do not do anything, you know, that sort of being with really transforms that, whatever it is, you know. But of course it's not easy. You need the energy to do it, the faith to do it, the insight to do it, the willingness to do it, the time to do it, you know. But there can be really such an amazing discovery, you know. It's also these things actually have no power. That can be really something. You know, it's quite amazing. Hmm? Now, then we have Dhammanupassana, what we can call mindful contemplation of phenomena. This gets a bit technical, but I will spare you that. We won't go into detail with this, but what does involve is basically tuning into the basic objects of insight, like the 5 aggregates, the 6 sense faculties, in order to gain insight into the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-self nature of phenomena. Right effort and right mindfulness work together. They are friends. And they can lead into the 8th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is called right concentration. By having, you know, right effort and right mindfulness long enough equals right concentration. Just comes. You know? We stay in a retreat long enough, day by day, by trying and bringing the attention back to whatever is present. We are building actually right concentration, which can become really deep. 4 or 5 stages are, you know, listed. But we have to bear in mind that right concentration in itself is not the aim, is not the ultimate goal. It's just a means to an end. Imagine it's like having a lens, which, you know, just makes it possible to see things more clearly. Because the mind becomes still. Imagine like having a camera, you know. If you move it all the time, pictures won't be much of anything, you know. If the camera is really still and the lens is really powerful, you know, you can get a very detailed picture of what is actually going on. You know? And right concentration is not an end in itself, But when it occurs, it has all the other 7 path factors unified with it. Remember this. Right concentration has together with it the other 7 factors. And so one uses this concentrated mind to start examining and investigating the nature of the body and the mind in the terms of, guess what? Impermanence of all phenomena. And that is what brings the arising of insight. The insight that will lead to liberation. So this is a kind of a very broad overview of the Noble Eightfold Path. Just take it as a sort of a map. Can be useful to have a wide map, I would say. Oh, so that's why we are doing all this nonsense. Okay, more faith and confidence now. There is actually a method to this madness. Who would have thought? I thought they were just pulling our legs, these funny people up there. So that's just about it. Questions or doubts? Anything?
What exactly means Dhamma and looking formation?
Yes.
What does it mean, looking at formation?
Well, Dhamma is a very wide subject. Let's call it like that. It's basically it includes anything and everything. So it's another thing which I forgot to tell you is that when we are practicing like the 4 foundations of mindfulness, body, feeling, citta, Dhamma, we are not really doing just this or just that. We are actually doing all of them at the same time, all the time. With a bit of more emphasis on this, a bit more emphasis on that. But you cannot really just do like contemplation of the body. It's not possible. You have everything in there. And when Dhammanupassana is basically anything and everything. It's a bit more detailed, but just to give you a rough idea. Oh, I still haven't done Dhammanupassana. Damn. No, it's not like that. No. You could actually say you are doing Chittanupassana all the time, because everything comes through the Chitta. Of course. Of course. But you can be a bit more, inclined toward the Chitta side of it, or a bit more inclined towards the Vedana side of it, or a bit more inclined towards the Dhamma side of it, okay, or the body side of it. That's the way I see it, because these are just lists and concepts, and trying to put into words something which is a very unspeakable experience or untellable experience. Not because it is a secret, but because it is very, very difficult to put into words these sort of things. So it is, okay, a broad map. Great, fantastic. Let's go. Anything else? Okay, then we can walk for 5 minutes and then come back for the metta. Thanks for your patience and attention. Thank you very much.